Hello. I don't
Awesome.
know the official title of today's webinar. It's
It is.
the state
It
of
is.
AI in
Yeah.
VO.
Yep.
Yeah,
Looks about
there we
sounds
go.
about good to
Works
me.
for me.
Yep.
um, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Tim and NAVA. And Karin, you're on, and
Yep. We got
Matthew
Karin
over
now.
there.
We
And
got Karin.
hey,
Yep.
hello. Hey,
Yep.
they
Hello.
they run an organization which is dynamite. The more I learn about this group, the more impressed I am with them. I've gone to them for resources, for help. Tim, you and I have known each other, I guess it was since 2014, coming on a
2014.
decade
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
When Tim was getting back into voiceover,
Yep.
I gave him some training. So we go way back, and there is so much talk in the industry, of course, about AI and synthetic voices and cloned voices, and there's just so many question marks, which I personally want to learn more, and I'm sure everyone on this call does. And so I said, Tim, how would you like to give a webinar? And well, here we are. So this is, I think, a wonderful time to learn what's current, because things are changing very, very quickly. I feel like as fast as I can keep up with it, that there are new things to learn. So I don't think anyone knows it more than NAVA. And so they are here to present some information, update us all on what is current, what's going on, what we should be concerned with, what we should know, what we may not know, what might be around the corners. We'll find out what they have to say. And what's great is that we will have time for a Q&A at the end, which is terrific. So save your questions. I think that if you have, I'm going to speak out here. You guys are running the webinar, but if you have questions which seem very time sensitive in terms of like they're really, or a question or even an anecdote, something to talk about that is really pertinent to part of the discussion, stick it in the chat. We can monitor the chat, and if something seems relevant for everyone, we can certainly talk about it right then.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let me pass you over to Tim, who is what do you go by? President, CEO of NAVA, head owner, rock
President and
star of NAVA.
co-founder. Yeah, president and co-founder, along with Karin. She's our vice president and
Karin,
co-founder.
you're all.
Is Karin
I know
Guilford?
you. Awesome,
Yeah.
Karin. Okay, well, the two of you rock, and
Yeah.
Matthew's been terrific, also, by the way.
Yeah, Matthew's awesome. He just got into the room, and so he should be joining us. She's still over in the DC area.
Okay.
And Karin, is that better now? I know it was a little quiet when we first
that's
started.
good.
Okay, great, awesome, cool. So I did drop. Thank you, David. Actually, you and I met. You met the day about 12 hours after I quit voiceover. I was done. I was never going to work again in voiceover, and I met you at the Voice 2014 conference in Anaheim. And I actually ended up staying because you had offered, I think, like a 7 a.m. or an 8 a.m. class the next morning, like a last minute, you threw in this class you were going to offer. And so a bunch of us ended up staying, slept in the lobby of the hotel so I could come down to your class because I hadn't planned on staying. I didn't have a hotel room. And then you and I started working, did a bunch of coaching that year. And then now, like cross paths over the last, 9 or so years. And now here we are again, back because of the AI conversation. And you and I got connected about a month ago or so, I guess, or reconnected over some AI questions and everything. So we are here to talk about all things AI. And I did drop a chat, a Google Doc link in the chat. If anybody would like to go there, you can put your Q&A, your questions on there. And David, I'm going to unspotlight you, and then we'll bring you back in once we're done with the slideshow. So Karin and I are going to go through. Matthew is here. Matthew's here hanging out in the background. I'm just kind of watching from the East Coast to see how things are going. Make sure we stay on track. Watching from afar, make sure we stay on track. So we are going to. I need to find the slideshow because I lost it in all the 12 windows that we have here. There we go. So we're going to start this. Karin and Matthew and I have been pretty heavily involved in the AI conversation since about a year ago, the launch of the Apple Find a Way books, audiobooks last year. So we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. I would definitely for the Q&A, if you want to drop that in the Google chat, and if your question gets answered, just feel free to go back in and just cross it out. If you don't mind leaving the question in there so everybody can see it, that would be great. And then we'll go from there. And if there's anything that doesn't get answered, This is something Karin and I have done multiple times now, so we tend to move pretty quickly through this. And the things that we will kind of pause and spend some extra time on some of the things we think are really relevant right now. Those things do change. As time goes on, we're going to find things that are changing. And there's actually a new slide in here that we added last week because of some things we've seen in some contractual language. And we'll see, we'll see how that goes and see what changes over time. Karin and I are going to jump into this. Karin, you ready? Should we do this thing?
I'm so ready.
Awesome.
Super
All right.
ready.
Awesome. Okay. So everybody's seeing that okay on the screen there?
Looks great.
Okay, great.
Before we start, though, I just want to say one thing, and that is that for all of you here tonight, the best thing that you can do regarding AI is to educate yourself, is to learn as much as you possibly can about all of this technology and all of what's at stake, because that is the only way that we're all going to be able to speak intelligently about things and make intelligent decisions about things. So,
yep, absolutely. And hopefully we leave you tonight with some great information and some, I'm sure we'll leave with more questions than anything, but we're going to jump right in. So this is our AI synthetic voice talk and Q&A. We refer to AI as kind of the term that gets thrown around all the time, but we actually refer to what comes out of that, and this is the synthetic voice. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So to start with, we are the National Association of Voice Actors. We are actually 1 year old as of 2 days ago. So 2 days ago was our 1 year anniversary. And this has kind of been our stance from the beginning, is that we are not anti-technology. We're not anti-AI. We're pro-voice actor. We want to make sure that we are a part of this conversation. We'll talk a little bit of maybe, touch on this a little bit. There is, some part of the people out there, some people out there who think that there should be no AI in anything at all whatsoever. There are those who are, willing to work it, and those who are embracing it. We kind of fall in the middle of this, where we believe the technology exists. It has existed for many, many years, 10 years, if not longer, in the format we're seeing now. Most recently, that's because of some of the advances that have happened in the last year, which is why this conversation has kind of popped up the way it has. But this is not new technology. It's not something that's going away. It's not something that we're going to be able to put back inside the bottle. So we want to be a part of the conversation about AI, because, as many of you know, if you've interacted with any of the synthetic voice systems that are out there, we literally are the voices of these systems. We are the voices they were trained on, along with many, many other voices, but we are the voices of these systems that people are creating and profiting from. So in order for us to get through this and hopefully be on the same page, we've tried to make it kind of digestible for everybody to understand. So we're going to talk about two things, which is AI and machine learning. And we see these terms come up in auditions frequently. This is the official kind of definition of this. So artificial intelligence, computer systems that are able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. This is visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, translation, dubbing. We've seen lots of these things. And then machine learning, which is the study of computer algorithms that allow computer programs to automatically improve through experience. So what does all that mean, actually? So we tried to simplify it as best we can. These are simplified versions. There are obviously deeper definitions in here, but artificial intelligence, the programs that take what they have learned and synthesize it, create new things out of it. Machine learning is feeding data to computers to teach them how to recreate and or to understand. And then is what we're really concerned about from voice actors, not only machine learning, but what's created from these synthetic voices, digital double, voice dubs, voice clones, digital clones, synthetic clones. That's what's created. And then generative AI, GAI, which we see a lot, a type of AI that can create new data from source material. It can generate new content. This is Chat GPT. This is anything along there. You put in a prompt into Dolly or Valley and you get an image. So that's kind of, where we sit with that. Anything you want to add to this, Karin, on this page?
Just that I'm very proud of my Zeus with a robot head for the generative AI.
Zeus the robot head is awesome. That's great. Yep, very nice. Very nice. Yeah, this is the Canva expert over here we've gotten into.
Well, yes, except none of those images are generative AI. They're
none
just
of the exactly,
cutting and pasting things together.
Generative Karin.
Generative Karin.
So we want to talk about kind of how are these things made. So part of this is understanding the process and where we as a voice actor sit into this process and where we are in this system. So this starts with a voice actor. Now you're in a studio, you're in a home studio, you go to an outside studio, you go into a production studio. What we record are human audio files. Those then go to the AI company, which has an AI neural machine. This is companies like Respeecher and Nuance, Murph.ai, Vocal ID, Veritone, some of the names that we're familiar with. Those are the AI companies in the middle. And what they create are synthetic audio files. That comes out, and that's what the end user or the consumer or the customer on the other end actually interacts with. And that can be from audiobooks, ADR, dubbing, voice description. And we're going to talk about this later, but I did put this note in here because it's important for us. It's in here twice. Is the contract can be between the voice actor and the end user, or the voice actor and the AI company, or potentially the voice actor in a casting company, or potentially a voice actor and through an agent, and various iterations, various ways this could work. So it's important that you understand as a voice actor who you're actually agreeing to the terms with. If you're signing through a casting agent, are you seeing the terms that the casting agent is agreeing to? Is it going to go to a production company? Does that production company then have different terms with potentially a synthetic voice company or an AI company on the other end? And are they going to potentially give away your audio files? So that's what we want to make sure we're aware of. So the two areas that we see the most often are text to speech, and this is when you actually just as what it says it is. It's you type in some text and you get some language, some speech on the other end. So the end user, and this could be a client, could be a customer, could be somebody who wants to go in and create a voiceover for an internal training video, could be potentially commercial, depending on which company it is. That goes into the AI company's neural machine, and out the other end comes a synthetic audio file. This all happens without any voice actor being involved, without any production being involved, just purely between the customer, the AI company, and the product on the end. So what we're seeing here is that there's no standard.
This,
yes.
The TikTok is the TikTok voice. That's the one that we're most familiar with, right? Mm-hmm. You enter in something on TikTok, and then a synthetic voice reads it. Yep. So that's the most prolific example, I think, or the most common example.
Yep. And if anybody's familiar with Bev Standing and her TikTok lawsuit, which happened about 2 years ago now, maybe a little bit longer, that was kind of the first time that any of us really had this kind of idea of AI or synthetic voices on our radar. So what's interesting about this is there's no standard compensation model for this type of usage. We don't know what the usage should be. If your voice is the one being used, how much should you get paid? Part of that is that companies track their metrics differently. Some track character throughput. Some track the length of time that's recorded. Some may go off of quantity of letters or sentences or finished audio in the end. So we don't really know. It's hard to track that because each company is kind of different. Companies also may charge for the initial development or the hosting of your synthetic voice. For anybody who'd worked with Vocal ID a few years ago, depending on what your arrangement was, it could have cost you a decent amount of money to have your synthetic voice made in there. And now what we have here is speech to speech. And this is something that we're seeing, probably we're going to see more of as things grow. And this is where you can speak. And actually, I'm gonna let Karin take this one because this is always great at explaining this one. I like this.
Speech to speech is the same. It's basically just like motion capture, except with just your voice. So in motion capture, an actor wears a suit that has lots of sensors on it, and they move around in the scene and they do this. And then you can put any character you want on top of it, and then the character does this, right? But it's an actual actor that has made that performance. Speech to speech is kind of the same. You need a real actor to act out all of the words. It'll be all of their emotion, all of their ums and ahs, all of their phrases, all of their pauses, all of their breaths. And then, sorry, I have a child under my desk. But then you can overlay a synthetic voice on top of it, and then it becomes something like The Audacity of Hope, narrated by Barack Obama, but performed by Karin Gilfrey, because I'm the performance and Barack Obama is the voice.
And that all can happen in that case with a real human and a synthetic human or synthetic voice in there. Moving on. So we come back to this because it's important to understand. I'm going to reiterate this. is who is your contract with? Who are you signing this contract with? So you could be working with the tech company. You could work with the end client. The end client could have an agreement with the tech company that's different from what they have with you. You could have an agreement with the end client, but then they go off and hire a new tech company and decide to take those audio files. So it's really important that you have clear understanding of where your audio files are, what the agreement is, how they can be used. And if there is any language that refers to AI or machine learning in there, that you're very clear about what that is. Could potentially, we'll talk about this later, as we have our NAVA AI writer that you can proactively put in place in preparation for this potentially going beyond where you had agreed to in the first place.
I want to talk about that slide actually for 1 second, just to say this is what we saw with the findaway voices and the narrators. So the rights holder of the book assumed that they had the rights to the audio performance as well, because they do. It's they get the money every time it sells. If it's a buyout with the narrator, then they paid one fee for that audiobook. And every time it sells, the rights holder still gets money, but the narrator doesn't, because it's a buyout. The rights holder, author maybe, or publisher, they gave the rights of that performance to Apple to scrape and use the voice actor's voice to train AI models and create synthetic digital doubles, without ever asking the permission of the voice actor. The voice actor never agreed to have their voice used to train AI models, but because the rights holder owned the file, they assumed that they had the right to give that away. So the narrators never knew that this was happening because they weren't consulted. And this is exactly why this slide is so important, because you need to know, and that's why the NAVA AI synthetic voice writer is so important, because if your client signs that, then you have already said in advance, I will not allow you to take my sound files and turn them into a synthetic voice. That's not part of this contract. So that's that.
Exactly. And this is a new one. This is actually our new slide, is beware the blended voice. We have been seeing more and more auditions go out in the last few months that are going to agents, that are going to casting directors, that are saying, don't worry, this job is safe because it's going to create an unrecognizable voice. It's going to create a voice that's not going to be in exclusive or in exclusivity conflict with the voice actor. We're of the opinion that these are more dangerous because you are creating now a unique, untraceable, unidentifiable, untrackable voice that potentially adds more competition into the marketplace. So now you're competing, now you have competition against other humans, against a synthetic version of yourself that sounds like you, and then now potentially completely synthetic voices that are a blend of 10 or 12 or 50 or 500 actors that is unrecognizable and unique. And that unique voice now becomes a direct competitor for every other human who is out there. This has kind of been a change in our thinking over the last few months, is because we just kind of thought of blended voices as really not any big deal. We hear Alexa, we hear Siri, we hear other things that are blended voices. But once we started seeing auditions where they were from the very beginning saying, don't worry, this is going to be a safe voice, we started to look at this a little closer. And our opinion right now, and this may change, and we're fully open to hearing other discussions about this, but that we believe this adds more competition into the marketplace for voice actors, and a fully synthetic version of a voice that if you have 10 or 20 or 500 actors, probably they're not going to pay those 500 actors who are in this model for the usage. And that takes away from the payment to the human voice actor. It doesn't allow them to give consent for the usage because they probably don't know their voice is being used for in this model. So where we're seeing this, and this is kind of a compilation of places we've seen over this whole year, in film and TV, we're seeing it in The Irishman, Indiana Jones, Obi-Wan, The Mandalorian, where they're de-aging. In The Mandalorian, was The Mandalorian, correct, Karen, with Luke Skywalker's voice?
Yeah, with Luke Skywalker's voice. They actually created a synthetic version of Mark Hamill's younger voice, and he was there filming on the day that they filmed the scene. Sorry to ruin it if you haven't seen it, but Luke Skywalker appears at one point. He was actually there filming the scene, but they used a synthetic version of his younger voice. And the way that the contract is now, they didn't really have to ask for consent to do that, because they kind of just put it under the umbrella of, oh, this is something that we're doing in post. We're just editing in post.
Yep.
But now that AI company has a synthetic version of Mark Hamill's voice. So in the future, if Disney ever was like, you know what, we kind of just want a synthetic version of Mark Hamill's voice, it's already ready to go.
We're seeing it in video games. A lot of places have internal demos or scratch. Video game called High on Life used a fully synthetic voice. God of War 2022 used actually credited respeecher in the credits. This was kind of an interesting case. This was with Sony, so we reached out to the casting director at Sony to find out what the story was, because we were very curious about that. And what they said is that the voice actor they used, he was 11 or 12 when they started the game, and 17 or 18 when they finished, and his voice had changed, and they needed to do pickups, and so they used respeecher to clone and do pickups in the younger version, like Mark Hamill, in the younger version of his voice, so they could do that. Dubbing. If anybody's seen the Fall, the flawless.ai, you can find that on YouTube. Just look up the Fall under flawless.ai. It is amazing. And this is where we're going to see speech to speech become more prevalent. The possibility that you could have Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt or some other movie star able to speak every single language in their own voice. You would still, probably in some capacity, at least currently, need to have a human translator and an adapter and somebody giving that performance in the foreign language. But you would then overlay, like Karin said earlier, overlay somebody else's voice on the performance. And then looping, we're seeing several areas where this is being used in looping already. And we're going to see more of this to come down the line. Actually, to go back to dubbing, and actually I'll talk about this later, there's actually a show on Hulu right now called Vanda, Vanda, that is fully synthetic dub. The English language dub is fully synthetic. It was done by a company called deepdub.ai. And we have a meeting with one of their founders. It's three brothers, I believe, who founded it. They're all in Israel. And so we've postponed our meeting with them until a later date. And then on into commercials, we're seeing scratch tracks and demos are increasingly being voiced by AI. Tags are being done by AI. If you have 80, 90, or 100 tags for something, you could potentially use a synthetic voice for all of those tags, and you could change them on the fly. They could be generative tags potentially, so that if you have a script that needs to go in there and it cycles through the script and creates a different versions depending on what's needed. And then we are currently seeing regional cable companies are offering fully synthetic AI created commercials, from the images, the visuals, the actors, down to the AI voices. Anything before we move on for this one, Karin? You want to add to this?
No, I think that's good. Well, actually, I will say one thing. That's that with commercials, localization is going to be a really, really big part of the future. It already is a huge part now. People are doing smaller ad buys of regional ads and really doing a lot of commercial targeting. And it's going to be in the future, probably 2 or 3 years from now, so targeted that they may even be able to use your name. They may even be able to name the product that you bought on Amazon and ask you if you liked it. You might like this other product. There's all kinds of things that are going to happen. It's going to be very much like Minority Report.
Yeah, exactly.
In the future.
So we're seeing this in non-broadcast industrial use. We're seeing this in translation. AI voices are being used to translate non-broadcast content into multiple languages. E-learning, much of this genre, we believe, and based on what we've seen, will be taken over by AI. And this is an area where contracts really, really need to be clear. E-learning, any kind of non-broadcast, is very hard for anybody to track, because unless you happen to be in that company, or you're at that trade show, or you're at that convention, or you're taking that training video, or you're working for a company that you have to do training, you're probably not going to hear that voice. Voice assistants, this is a genre that's always been AI. Karin, you can take this one. You talk about this a lot.
Yeah, they say all the time, people say, well, AI can't act, and it doesn't sound human, and it's not realistic enough. Honestly, it doesn't matter. My children interact with Google all day. We talk to Siri on our phones. If you have a, I won't say her name in case it makes one of the speakers go off, but the one that starts with an A, if you have one of those in your house, you're probably interacting with it all day. My kids are 6 and 4. By 10 years from now, that'll be totally the norm. And 20 years from now, it won't matter at all if something is synthetic or not.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be human sounding. And in fact, it makes you feel better if it's not human sounding in some ways.
Yeah.
Because you feel kind of weird. You're talking to somebody who sounds really human.
Yeah.
It's a robot.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll talk about phone systems.
Yeah,
too.
go for it. Yeah. Yep.
Phone systems have historically been kind of robotic sounding. That's not necessarily because AI has always been used. In fact, the phone systems that use AI sound more natural than the ones that have kind of the legacy phone systems. I do a very big phone system for a very big pharmacy chain. And with that phone system, I have recorded every single prompt, 10,000 different store addresses, every single press 1 or press 2 or people's names, individual numbers, et cetera, et cetera. And then they cut it all together and they put it together to make sentences. And it sounds very kind of disjointed and robotic. AI will make it so that I don't have to be in the session to do all of those things. And it's also going to make it sound a lot more cohesive and less robotic. Now, that's all fine and good as long as they pay me and they pay all of us if they want to use our voice on their phone system. And that's something that is going to be worked out.
And this is interesting because we've had various companies approaching us, and 2 of them are IVR companies that are interested in learning how to work with voice actors and trying to figure out how to work rates and what would be fair in there. And that's something that that we're still trying to navigate, and they're trying to figure out and navigate as well. Audiobooks we talked about. Apple has been offering synthetic narrators. They had 4 in November of last year, and I'm sure that's grown. Actually, we need to take a look and see what their current roster looks like. But this kind of launched where there were 2 voice actors who were like, wait, that's my voice. Where did that come from? How did that become a narrator for Apple audiobooks? And this is where it was traced back to the Findaway voices. Findaway actually is a union, does work with the union. And so the union has been dealing with Findaway directly to find some way to come to an agreement or make some arrangement with this. I'm not sure exactly what that is. There's been a little bit of communication about it, but not a lot. So we don't really know the full status of that.
The other thing is, if you're on ACX, you may have received an email in the last couple of days about a great opportunity for you to create a synthetic voice through ACX and have it available to you. You can decide whether or not you want to do that, but just be very informed before you do.
Moving on. So what we are seeing in the industry right now, there's just hundreds of tech companies that are springing up. They're trying to sign performers to contracts directly through pay-to-play sites. They're going to agents. They're going to casting directors. There's a broad range of rates and terms. Some are very good and some are not good. But part of what makes this difficult is that some of these terms may mean different things to different AI companies and different casting directors and different agents. So it's trying to figure out how to navigate that and make sure that you're clear on what these terms mean. Some producers are familiar with the entertainment industry, so in video games or co-ed industrial, and they're open to bargaining. They're open for favorable terms for voice actors. One of the things that we've heard time and time again and over, and the people that we've dealt with directly is that they want to work with voice actors, and so far, money hasn't been the concern. It's been how to do this fairly and equitably, so that somebody feels that they're getting a fair deal on it. But the people we've talked to have been open to, let's have, if we need more money, what is fair? What is fair? And so this is what we're trying to figure out as we go through. So the tech industry won't wait. If we don't act now, we will lose our opportunity to have a voice in the conversation. Yes, pun intended. We use this a lot. We want to be a part of this because we literally are the voice of these systems. You're going to listen to that and say, wait, that sounds like my voice. How did that voice get in there? So moving on, some of the tech companies, and we're just going to touch on some of these. 11labs.io is the big one. That's the one that they launched in January of last year and immediately jumped into becoming the company that was implicated in some doxing on Twitter. Currently, it takes 3 seconds of source audio to make a synthetic voice on there. They do have some safety features in place, but currently, if you just say, I agree that I have the rights to this audio file, you can upload it. FakeU.ai and Uberduck.ai were the 2 that launched with thousands of they didn't launch with, we found thousands of audio files there about a year ago, and reached out to them. They have been willing to take down the audio files if the voice actor requests it, but they actually don't have to, because the voice actor doesn't own the copyright to those performances or those audio files. Voices.ai is owned by voices.com. Voice.ai is not. And you can create your AI voice for free from just about anybody who happens to be on that site. Voices.ai, if anybody's been following voices.com, they have a new CEO. His name's Jay O'Connor. We met with them a couple of weeks ago, and we hope to see some changes coming down from voices.com in the way that they operate and the way that they deal with their voices and their contracts. Hopefully we feel positive that we're going to see something good out of that, but we haven't seen anything yet.
And since if you're on voices.com, you may have noticed that they've sent out the same job, personally asking people via email to do a job that's sometimes it's $600, sometimes it's $300 for you to record a certain number of words and 15 minutes of your a video of you. And you get paid one rate if they just to do that job, and then if they use it beyond, you might get paid another rate. But that is an AI job. It says nothing about AI in the email that has been going around, and they keep emailing and keep emailing and keep emailing.
And voice actors are pushing back and saying no, and they're turning it down, and they're writing back and saying I don't like this. I don't agree with this. And they have not been pleased with it. So, sorry, Stephen. Yeah, do you want to? Stephen said, didn't Voices.com recently change their user agreement to claim all rights to anything uploaded to their site? Exactly the opposite. In May, they changed the terms of service to make sure that it was clear that they didn't have the rights to anything AI or anything rights to any of the audio uploaded for auditions. Once it goes from there into the client, then there are potentially different terms in place. I don't know, Karin, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so it's a little tricky with the legalese, because they have to assert rights over the physical file, because they have to be able to move the file from like one server to another, place to place. So they do kind of have rights over the file. They also assert transformative rights, meaning they can take a file and transcribe it. They can take a file and use it potentially on the site to showcase you. But they explicitly say in their new terms of service, they do not have the right to turn anything into AI, and they will not and have not ever turned anything into AI or trained any AI systems and models.
So they don't have all rights in there. They do have some rights. They do claim rights to some of that. So that's important for you to read. Largo.ai at the bottom here. They made a big splash a few months ago where they emailed all the voice actors and said, hey, congratulations, you're on our AI site. And voice actors were like, what the heck is going on? They're an AI casting company, and they're using AI to cast. They don't have any audio files on there. They scraped IMDb. We reached out there in Sweden. We reached out to the CEO and one of the people who works over there and had a conversation with them. They scraped IMDb for data, and they found all the voice actors on IMDb, and they started emailing everybody. So moving on. So what we are seeing in SAG After contracts, and this is something that was released by SAG After, and there is this term here called character simulation, which has been in these contracts for years. This meant that they could have a voice match come in, they could edit the files, they could simulate that file that you had. Now that means in a digital environment, a digital world, that means something completely different. So we have to figure out how to get that language changed. One of the things that we've been seeing also, and this is in an addendum to the contracts, is that the player consents to the use of their name, voice, actual or simulated, likeness, actual or simulated, and biography, with no additional compensation, in all media and by all technologies and processes now known or hereafter developed throughout the universe and in perpetuity. These were in union contracts. They've done SAG After has gone back and said this language is not valid and cannot be enforced, but has been in contracts for years, and we don't know what the ramifications of that are. So I'm not going to read this entire thing, but this has been SAG after statement on artificial intelligence and digital doubles. They are part of the Human Artistry campaign, as is NAVA, and kind of working globally to advocate for AI protections. And the SAG After Strike is over as of Wednesday night at midnight of last week. And for those who have seen the terms, there's still a lot of debate about whether these are good or whether these are damaging, and what should be in there and what shouldn't be in there. What my biggest takeaway from here, and this is what Karin and Matthew and I were doing last week, this is a great start, but the stronger protections need to come from lawmakers and legislation. This goes across the board for anybody, because even if the union contract does go through and those protections are in place, 80% of the voiceover industry is non-union. So we are not going to get those protections. So, but we will see whatever happens in the SAG after a contract trickle down and influence what happens in the non-union world. But lawmakers and legislation is what really, really needs to be put in place in order for this to really be safe and enforceable in the country for everybody. Anything you want to add to that, Karin?
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind is that, legislation is important, but also, in my opinion, the first thing that is passed regulating AI is going to set the precedent for everything that comes after it. So the SAG after contract may very well be the first kind of AI regulation that we see passed for people who do our job. And that means that the laws that come after that might not necessarily go further than what the SAG after contract has laid out, because that will be the precedent for actors, if that makes sense. But, I could be wrong. Read every single thing you can about the contract. Read the summaries, read the infographics, talk to people. If you are a person who is going to vote on this contract, educate yourself, inform yourself, and make the best decision for you. The full contract is, by the way.
Yeah,
for several weeks.
Correct. Yeah, the full contract's not out yet. Authors Guild has made a statement, as has SAG-AFTRA, as far as their audiobooks as well. So no member may enter into agreements with companies seeking to create and license or use digital replicas of their voice, or to train AI systems until such a time as the company becomes a signatory to a SAG-AFTRA agreement. Now, that is very interesting, because we don't know what happens if they do become a signatory, whether there will be the ability to for a voice actor, if they choose to engage in synthetic or AI cloning at that point. So for us, regardless of the contract, union, non-union, it's important for us to look. What we have are our 6 tenets for contracts. Number 1 being the ability for the performer to consent to use. Karin, do you want to go through these?
I'd love to.
Awesome.
This is 6 tenets for contracts, specifically relating to if you're going to create an AI voice. So if you decide that you're going to create an AI voice, or if someone asks you, please, we need you to make a synthetic voice for this project, these are the 6 things you need to look for. You need the ability to consent to use. It should not be a situation where you're hired for the job, and that means automatically they're going to make a synthetic version of your voice. You need to explicitly give consent. You need to explicitly be asked if it's okay to create your digital double. Explicit limits on use. That means for us, it could be a time limit. It could be it's just used for this project. It could be all kinds of things, but there needs to be some kind of limit so that it's not just we have your voice and we can do anything we want with it. There should be the ability to opt out. So at some point, if you say, you know what, I don't feel like I want to have this synthetic voice available anymore, you should have the ability to leave. Or there needs to be a term limit. Like, you can license my voice for 1 year for this phone system. After that, we will renegotiate. If you want to use my voice again, we get another year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. When that term limit is over, you're not under any obligation to keep me. I'm not under any obligation to keep my voice out there in the world. Appropriate payment for use. This one is the trickiest, because this is brand new technology and we don't really know what appropriate payment is. But I will tell you, there are a couple things to keep in mind. If someone is using a synthetic version of a digital double of you, a synthetic version of your voice, a voice clone for a commercial, and it is recognizable as you, you should be paid exactly the same for that commercial as you would be if it was your voice, because you'll have the same conflicts with other products, and they're still licensing your voice for the use in association with a product in a specific region where the commercial pays for a specific period of time. It doesn't matter if it was generated by a robot. That's not how we're paid in commercials. We're paid to license our voice. We're not paid for the time it takes to record a 30-second commercial. For other genres, it's going to be different, but keep in mind that if they're using you and it's your voice, it might be easier for them to generate a lot of text and you don't have to be in the studio, but keep your rates high. Clearly denoted exclusivity. If they don't want you to make any other synthetic voice, then that's kind of a problem. But also you need to keep them informed about the different products that you have and the different companies that you work for, so that you're not the phone system of a giant pharmaceutical company like CVS, and then Walgreens gets your voice and has you on their phone system. That's going to be a big problem for everybody, even though phone systems technically don't have a conflict. And safe storage and tracking. If they're creating a synthetic version of your voice, you need to be sure that if that company folds or goes under or gets bought by another company, what happens to your voice? Where are they keeping it? How are synthetic audio files generated, and how are those being passed from the AI company to the consumer? And how are all the files being stored, and how is your voice being stored? So keep all of that stuff in mind if you want to make a synthetic voice.
And to help with that, we've got a few things, some terms to look out for. So keep an eye out for any of these things: synthetic or synthesization, digital double, voice clone, TTS, or STS, text speech to speech, composite voices, blended voices, fully synthetic voices, AI training, voice modeling, anything along those lines are things to look out for. We mentioned this earlier, but simulation can cover sound-alikes and voice matches, but we need to define that industry-wide, because that now potentially for our industry means one thing. Simulation to the tech industry means something completely different. And so it's important for us to know what those mean in the contracts. And then digital anything, just be aware if you see digital anything in that contract, to make sure you know what it means. We have put together what we have called 13 questions to ask. This is courtesy of Melissa Medina. If you've seen her Twitter videos, she does a great job of explaining that she comes from tech and is a voice actor. So she came out of tech and has worked in these systems. But the first question to ask, and this is in big bold letters, is the compensation for this job enough to offset future lost work and income for the rest of my career? If something happens,
and just to clarify,
Yep.
This is 13 questions to ask if someone wants to create a synthetic version of your voice.
Correct. Yep. And so make sure that your next job doesn't become your last job, or if you're a new voice actor, your first job doesn't become your last job. You can find that on our website. Here's the link, but it's just, you can go to navavoices.org and you can find it under our AI section. This is AI-questions. We have a fillable PDF on the site that you can send to a client, and they can fill out and send back to you so you can get clarification on this. We're also going to be working with Melissa to help us put together some best practices for AI companies, so that we can look at a company and know what to look for in that company to know if they are safe. Are their practices, do they have good practices or not? And can we find some way to look at that company and find out? The next thing that we've added is our NAVA AI synthetic writer. This can be added to any non-union contract. It can be added to a SAG After contract if the client agrees. This helps to protect. It's not an ironclad protection, but it does help to protect against the unauthorized use of a talent's voice to create or train AI and synthetic voices. This has already been adopted by many, many places, many voice actors, producers. Large companies we've worked with have taken this language and put this into their contracts. We're starting to see this as boilerplate come back from companies. And version 3 is currently live, and it has instructions on how to use it and how to explain to your clients what these terms mean. So if you want, you can go to the website, It's the navavoices.org/synth.ai. NAVA has also launched a legal aid fund. This will help on a case-by-case basis with contract review. NAVA will cover half the cost of a contract review. And I have a typo in there. Contract review with Rob Ciclampaglia. Though I spelled Ciclampaglia correct, but I got the word contract wrong. So something's happening here. That is good. Legal consult on a case-by-case basis. NAVA may help cover the cost of an initial consult with Rob or with our legal team. And we are working with some law schools and some clinic assistants with George Mason University, Harvard Law School, and Penn State. I was at George Mason University on Tuesday afternoon, presenting to their law clinic about copyright issues and voice and some other concerns we have. These vary by state. So Harvard, for example, can only work with you if you're in Massachusetts and California. George Mason University can work with you if you're in Virginia, and Penn State can work with you if you're in Pennsylvania. So some of you, if you live in those states, you'll have some resources. Moving on to Karin, why don't you talk about this one? This is you launched this one. This was your brainchild.
Sure. NAVA has an AI ethical use of AI campaign called #FairVoices. It basically outlines the 3 things that we believe are incredibly important when we're talking about AI, and that is fair consent, meaning you should not be able to create a synthetic version of my voice without my permission. I need to give you active consent, not passive consent, not, oh, I clicked agree to the terms of use, and now I'm on a Zoom call and you're taking my voice, and because I agreed to the terms, that means it's fair game. Active consent. Fair compensation. I need to be paid fairly for the use of my synthetic voice, for the use of my likeness. And fair control. I want to be able to decide what my voice says. I do not want you to rob me of my personal freedom of speech by taking words out of my mouth and potentially having me voice a Trump ad, or potentially having me voice an ad for a competing company that I don't work for as a human. I need to have control over what my voice says. I mean, let's not even talk about all the nefarious ways that people can use your voice if you don't have control over it. So keep all of that in mind. And again, we are not anti-AI. We are pro-creative. If you make any post that is kind of pro-creative people or for consent, compensation, and control, you can use #FairVoices and be part of the campaign. We also created the Fair Voices Pledge. We went around to all of the different companies that do casting and some companies that are actually AI companies or AI companies and one other casting company that's not an online casting company. And we asked them to make a pledge to never use the sound files that they have in their possession to create and train AI without the express active consent of the voice actors whose voices are on those sound files. And they all agreed. Even voices.com agreed. But then they changed their CD and they've had a bunch of other kind of weird things going on. So we removed them until a time when they can come back to the table and say, yes, this is absolutely what we stand for and believe in and want to be part of the pledge. So this doesn't mean that they're not going to post AI jobs on their site. Mm-hmm. They still may post AI jobs on their site. You can still audition for those jobs. You can still be hired by those jobs. They have no control over what the companies do if they have your sound files from those jobs. But they have said that the files on their site, the files that they have in their possession, will never be used to make or train AI and synthetic voices without the active consent of the person whose voice it is.
Yep. And I just want to reiterate that if you are still free to work with a client on there who's posting AI jobs, but it is now up to you, as it should be, to understand what the terms of the service needs to be in there. We're working with, hopefully, with some of these companies to kind of make the next step in this, which would be to help have the casting companies put some protections in place to require the client to get that on the other end, but they don't all operate the same way, so it isn't necessarily feasible across the board. Moving on. So we have been working alongside SAG After, the Concept Art Association, Human and Artistry campaign, United Voice Artists, VALC, which is the Voice Actors League of Kenya, and the Voiceover Conference in Nigeria. Actually, VALC, now the Voice Actors League of Kenya, has just recently joined United Voice Artists. So we are now a 19-nation coalition. We are based in the EU. As of this afternoon, we are actually an official federation based in France. So we are a global federation. So ways that NAVA is getting involved: we're going to conventions. We're doing education like this. We have our AI synthetic writer, pay-to-play action media. We've been giving interviews. I think the last time we looked, there was I'd given 105 interviews since January to various different publications and interviews and lots of things along those lines. So I'm going to skip to this because I need to put these in a different order. So NAVA on Capitol Hill. So Tim, Karen, and Matthew were in DC for 12 meetings across 2 days. And we just got back. We were there Monday and Tuesday. And Matthew, who is on the call somewhere here listening in, we spent 2 days or a day and a half meeting with senators and representatives, almost all of them on the Judiciary Committee, and almost all of them involved in the No Fakes Act, which is legislation regarding deep fakes with image and voice. So we went there specifically to talk about the concerns of voice actors, to talk about what legislation we would like to see and how we would like to see that phrased and put into this legislation. We're also working on the amendment proposal for the EU AI Act. 6 of us worked with 3 lawyers over the course of about 2 months to write an amendment proposal to the EU AI Act. We submitted that on July 31st. They were currently in negotiations. They ground to a halt last week. I believe it was either German or an Italian and French AI company stepped into the conversation and kind of ground to a halt the entire conversation around the EU AI Act. The initial plan was that it was going to go into its first vote on December 16th and possibly go into effect before the end of the year, but we don't see that happening currently. U.S. Senate bills: there's platform accountability and transparency, which would mandate third-party independent research of AI systems to see what's in there. And then Senate Bill 2961, which we actually is officially endorsed by NAVA. It's the Senators Kennedy and Schatz, and it is a labeling act. There's a House bill as well. Yeah, sorry. Yep.
I put in the chat as well, if anyone wants to see, the Brennan Center does an AI legislation tracker, which I just discovered today, which is amazing. If you look down, you can see all of the different bills and things that are being written and where they are in various places. It's a cool resource.
Awesome. And I lost where I was because I clicked on that link. So let me move this back up and present that. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to reshare where we were. All right. So, and then there is also another one called the Remove Section 230 Protections, which would remove Section 230 protections for anything AI generated. And Section 230 is the legislation that is in place that shields like companies like Facebook, tech companies, from what the clients or the customers do on their site or use the platform for. So currently those protections are in place. So the AI companies, 11 Labs, various other companies, you can use that technology to say anything, and that company itself is protected. So that's something that we support as well. So how can you, as voice actors, get involved? The best thing we can do right now, the first thing we missed up here at the top is just educate yourselves, learn about this as much as possible, but also keep the VO community in the loop when it comes to auditions and AI synthetic terms that you're seeing. If you see these terms show up, the reason we know about these blended voices things is because over the course of about 4 days, we had multiple people, talent and agents, reaching out to us asking about the concerns over blended voices. And so you can reach out to NAVA. We have an email address, reporting. It's reporting@navavoices.org, where if you would like to submit something to us, it's an email address that I am the only one who has access to and can look at as safe as we can look at something that's emailed around. Read your contracts, all of them, not just contracts for AI, but every contract that you get, read them. If you go into a session and they hand you a 14-page contract before the session, sit down and read your contract. I know it's weird. We don't want to be difficult actors. We don't ever want to be the ones to say no, but you have to take that time to ensure that you're protected, because your first job could become your last job. Your next job becomes your last job. Send your clients the AI synthetic voice writer when necessary. Make these protections standard. Ask for these to be standard in your contracts. Share their Fair Voices campaign and information with others. Ask questions and don't be afraid to say no. I know how hard it is. Somebody offers you a job, your first instinct say, yes, absolutely. Great. What do we do? Take a breath, stop and look at that. I've turned down work this year. I know many people on this call. I've seen it. I know people here. We've all turned down work this year. The danger that is posed right now to the decimation of our career or this industry is too dangerous to take something without fully reading or understanding what it is. And if you have to say no, you have to say no. It may go to a different voice actor. But what we're seeing right now with what's happening on, on voices.com, the same job keeps going out and people keep saying, what's going on? Quit sending this job out. Be aware of this job. So, this, I don't think this has changed. I don't think we can close Pandora's box. I feel like we have some control over it. But it is here and it's going to improve at an exponential rate. We have seen that happen already. 2 or 3 years ago, it took about 10 hours of source audio to create a believable synthetic voice. Beginning of the year, you were at about 2 hours, and now you're around about 3 seconds on 11 labs, 3 seconds of source audio to create a believable version of somebody. It still can't do can't do long form. It's very hard to take 3 seconds of audio and create a believable audiobook out of it. But to create, Karin, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
So first of all, when we were at MAVO this past weekend, which was really fun, and if you have a chance to go next year, you should definitely be there. It was great. Just in a live demonstration, I asked someone to come up from the audience and just tell us her name into my phone and what she had for breakfast. And she literally said, my name is Pat and I come from blah, blah, blah. And I had a blueberry muffin for breakfast. And then I said, thank you. And she went back and sat down. And then live, I generated a synthetic version of her voice that said, hey, it's Pat. I love that my voice is now a robot. And just so you know, I give you access to my bank account. My voice is my password. So that's totally fine with me. Okay, thanks. Bye. And it sounded so much like her that the whole room, Then the night before we went and had all these meetings with all of the lawmakers in DC, I decided, we keep saying that this might be possible with children's voices, but we hadn't tried it. And so I decided my daughter could be the guinea pig. And we took a little audition that she did. She's 6. She does auditions, sometimes voiceover auditions. We took a little audition and fed it into 11 labs, and it spit out a synthetic version of her voice that literally left me speechless. Tim and Matthew were with me. They saw me like I had no words. It was horrifying. And so we played it for the offices that we visited on Capitol Hill, just to say, this is possible. This was a tiny sample of audio that we took from her, and it sounds just like her. This is what is possible. And this is why we need legislation immediately. Not just for us as actors, but for everyone as humans. So we haven't lost hope.
There we are. Yes.
We're working hard to make things happen.
Yep.
And we would love to have your questions. Let's see if they're in the doc.
Yeah, there's some in the doc and there's some in the chat. So let's answer the doc. Have you received any response from the FTC about generative AI result of their webcast? If I was on the FTC roundtable conversation about that, and that might be the webcast you're referring to. What's interesting about this, we haven't received anything particular directly from the FTC, but the FTC did submit what they call it, comments to the Copyright Office. Copyright Office had an open forum for you to submit comments, and the fact that the FTC took the time to comment on another branch of another part of the government apparently is a substantially huge thing, that nobody goes into somebody else's area and comments on how they're doing their work. So the fact that the FTC stepped up and did that is really, really interesting. A lot of people were very surprised by that they would do that. So they're paying attention. The Copyright Office is paying attention. Everybody's paying attention and trying to do things. It's just a question of what will they do and how fast will they do it, and when can that happen. What about creating your own AI voice clone and using that to scale up your work? Absolutely.
Talk about that.
Yeah, Karen, go for it. Yeah.
So I have a voice clone. I created a voice a couple of years ago with Vocal ID, which was then bought by Veritone. So now I have a voice through Veritone. It was finished in 2021, in November of 2021. It is now November of 2023, and the voice has been used exactly once. One time. And the job that I got is great because I'm reading the weather and they're paying me a licensing fee for the year. And it's a job that I couldn't do as a human because I can't read the weather in every single city as it's happening in every single moment. But I don't know. I don't think that having a synthetic voice ready to go is going to be that beneficial for any of us. I think the best way to decide whether or not to create a synthetic version of your voice is to wait for a project that asks for it. As I've alluded to a few times on this call, I'm the national brand voice of CVS Health, and I'm on the CVS phone system. Right now, none of that system is synthetic, but they would probably like to make a synthetic version of my voice, and I am completely open to that, as long as it stays within the phone system and we agree on a rate that is good for both parties. As long as those things are in place and I have in writing that it's not going to be used beyond that, that's totally fine with me. But I don't necessarily think that every voice actor needs to have a synthetic voice at the ready. The synthetic voice that I have already did not work with the phone system that CVS uses, so they couldn't even use it if they wanted to. You might have a synthetic voice that works with one computer program that then does not translate over to the project that you're doing. So then the synthetic voice that you might have paid to have it made is worth nothing because it doesn't translate over to the job that you're going to be hired for. So I would say don't necessarily have a voice. Just wait until someone asks you, and then make sure the contract is as tight as it can be.
And Light Crystal, whoever Light Crystal is, I don't know what we're doing about this in Australia. Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know what the landscape looks like in Australia. We are, the United Voice Artists, which is a global group of artists, is primarily UK, EU, and China. Well, actually, we got Taiwan and Kenya, Nigeria in that group as well, but we haven't branched out much beyond that. So, on the flip side, might it be possible to use tech to modulate your voice so that it still sounds human but is not your true voice? Then make that voice synthetic for extra, or a possibility. I mean,
to have a hold on, I'm still here. I'm going to move locations.
Sure.
If it doesn't sound like you won't have the conflicts, but
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if then you would have the way to actually prove that it's you. I mean, you'd have to have some of the I guess if we have the provenance of that, you'd be able to show that it's yours. But I'm not sure. That's a really good question. I guess you're talking about creating another unique voice, different from your own, and I guess if there's value in that. I don't know. I'm not quite wrapping my brain around how that would be beneficial. I think the real benefit comes from the performances that we give as humans. I think that's where the real benefit comes from, and where we can do something that nobody that an AI can't do, a synthetic voice can't do, is our ability to to bring emotion and experience and childhood trauma and happiness and love to these things that that an AI can't do. Basically like becoming a casting company who has a synthetic roster, but speech to speech allows you to personally be the one who does the voicing. Yeah, this is where the blended voice comes in. That there could be a casting company that has a synthetic roster, just synthetic voices. And this is probably what we're going to see, what we are seeing in the dubbing sphere overseas, more than likely. And with the show Vonda on Hulu, which is, I'm not sure exactly how Deep Dub does their technology because we haven't spoken with them yet. But potentially, yeah, you could potentially creating a synthetic roster. Absolutely. And that is then attached to a human to do the performance. Yeah. And let me grab, is it Dina?
It is.
Hello.
Hey there.
Hello. How are you?
Hi, good.
Go.
I've been wondering if everything we submitted was on the blockchain, like, an NFT, and I am speaking so out of my area of expertise. If anybody knows better, then pile on. But if everything we submitted was tagged with our ownership, just like an NFT, that ownership follows that file through its lifespan. And every time it was used, we were somehow compensated like a royalty.
Yep. We've been working on that for about 3 years.
Okay.
And the feasibility of doing that, the cost of doing that, is currently just too prohibitive to be able to really afford to do it on the scale that we as voice actors want to do of 50 or 60 files a day, if you're doing a lot of auditions. Also it is very easy to take audio and just throw it in. I can record audio off of this Zoom call and put it into Pro Tools and it's going to sound really good. You can strip that, any of that, any of that out of that, and essentially strip the protections that you have in there. So there has to be, either some kind of traceability and trackability that sticks with the that's embedded in the sound of the voice. Or watermarking is easy to remove from an audio file, especially when you move into a synthetic voice. That's a tough one. But there are, we're working on ways to create a voice print. And this is a company that I've had working, for a couple of years now. But is to create an actual digital data set of your voice that is then you can match to any voice out there. And you can, if you hear a synthetic voice on the internet or somewhere, you can check it to see if it's your voice. It'll just essentially match and verify that it's your voice. You create a data set, a data set of your voice. Potentially, we're looking into this, that data set could be copywritten, and then you could copyright the sound of your voice. But this is very theoretical right now. So,
got it. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Dina, just like Tim said, the example that I gave of, I took this woman's voice just live. She just talked into my phone. We also did that with one of the lobbying firm that we work with. We were walking across Capitol Hill, and this guy was having a conversation with Tim. Want me to make a digital version of your voice? And he said, sure. And he literally never stopped talking. I picked up my phone as he was talking to Tim. I held it right up next to him, picked up his voice, created a synthetic version of his voice, which everyone in the office found hilarious. And they sent it around.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't, what Tim's talking about, creating a signature for your voice is a better idea than having just sound files be, traceable.
Yeah, that sounds fabulous.
And that's something we're gonna be looking for volunteers, for voice actors who want to volunteer to help us with that system, probably in the next week or so. And then the hope is to launch. We were probably realistically now we're looking at the end of December for a launch on there. But that would be able to create, the authorization. You could authorize your voice to be used, or not used for somewhere. So. If someone creates multiple voices and submits work with them all, how does this affect the pool of work for other actors? Now you're talking about just creating, digital or synthetic competition. Now you're just adding, there's a massive amount of work out there, but there's also still a massive amount of competition. And if you add, more people into that competition or that pool, wouldn't having the ability to blend 500 voices provide an unlimited number of voices? Absolutely. You could blend those things. What about your voice already being in the public domain? Example, LibriVox. Interesting you brought up LibriVox, because LibriVox is the data set, is the foundation of Google and 11 Labs. So if you've ever done work for LibriVox, your voice, you are a part of 11 Labs. You are a part of Google Voices. It is public domain. We are currently working around this LibriVox conversation specifically with the argument that performance may have been public domain, but the sound of your voice was never meant to be public domain, and they don't have the right to use the sound of your voice. However, now the sound of your voice is not something that you can legally protect. You can copyright and protect the performance that you did, but not the sound of that performance. And this is where the Copyright Office is getting involved here. Alan, I can't do little boy voices anymore, but I was thinking I could clone my own childhood voice. Since I have a recording of it, this could expand my range and still be me. Would it be ethical for my agent to submit for child voices, and does it have to be disclosed at casting? So ethical, yeah.
The short answer is no, that's not ethical.
Yeah.
The second part of that answer is, and it's not ethical because you're not disclosing it. And if they say we want a synthetic version of your voice as a child, that's one thing. But hold on.
Yep.
You keep going, Tim.
Yep. But also along those lines, along with those changes of terms of service on the casting sites, they've also added terms of service to say that you cannot audition with a synthetic voice. So it goes both ways. You can't have a synthetic voice stolen from you or used without your permission, and you also can't try to pass off a synthetic voice as a human voice in a casting on there. So,
there's another thing I want to talk about too, though, and that's that if you're using the sound of a child voice, you're technically using the voice of a minor. And even if you are no longer a minor, the voice that you're using is still the voice of a minor. And so it should only be used for very specific things. Now, there are no laws against this yet, but I imagine that someday there will be, because you can't make the sound of a child say just anything. We're seeing right now, I'm sorry to turn it dark, but we're seeing right now people creating synthetic child pornography. And using real children's voices and real children's images to create digital children and create pornographic images and videos. And that's something that needs to be legislated as soon as possible.
Yeah. Robbie, I've been thinking of finding ways to use AI to help enhance our skills, like accent acquisition or using it for iteration. Do you have any other suggestions on how we can utilize the tech to make sure our human performances are still better than AI? This is a very interesting kind of conundrum that we run into, because some of this AI is better than a lot of voice actors who are first starting. However, if this is how all voice actors had to get started somewhere, and if you can't learn and train, you can't get better. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. So, there may become a higher bar to entry that you're going to have to be better and have better audio quality and have a better home setup before you become competitive over an AI. That the AI synthetic voice may be may take the place of some of these entry-level jobs. I can see in the audiobook realm, I mean, I have fixed multiple jobs and helped re-record audiobooks that were so terrible it's amazing they even made it onto Audible. There was one that had helicopters in the background, and you could hear the refrigerator running, and he sounded like he was 10 feet away. But it passed and made it up onto ACX. We had one that we replaced that they didn't bother to edit the book, and so the narrator was swearing every time they would mess up, and it was up there for 3 years. So that's not something, that's not going to happen with AI, right? A synthetic voice is not going to make a mistake. It's not going to have a refrigerator running in the background. It's not going to have, it's not going to misspeak the words on the page and not get caught. It's not going to have to do pickups. So, there may be a point where, where the beginner level voice actor becomes, it just has to be a higher barrier to entry. But that's a tough one. And then AGI, are you referring to what you're like fully artificial intelligence when you're talking about this, like beyond the generative? But yeah, okay. If we start getting into artificial intelligence, somebody asked me today earlier on part of one of the Q&A I did earlier, and they said, where do you see things in 10 years? See, Dana. And I said, it's impossible to predict what's going to happen in the next 6 months. From what we've seen. So I can't even comprehend where we're going to be in 10 years. I don't know where we're going to be in a year from now.
There's one thing we haven't talked about yet that Matthew spoke about so well on Capitol Hill. And that is, someone asked earlier, like, what if you had 500 voices, like that would just make infinite number of voices. The question is, what is training those voices, and what is coming out? So Matthew, if you would mind speaking a little bit about that.
Let me spotlights. Let me bring Matthew up into the spotlight there. Hello. Good to see you. Last time I saw you, you were in DC. Now you're still in DC.
And I'm still here. I'm still here. No, when we were on the Hill talking, I wanted to bring to the attention that I gave the example of the last Marvel project that I did, and Captain America is Black now, so I'm very fortunate to be able to voice Captain America. But the casting director was very transparent with me and said that they were interested in going the AI route at first. So they typed in Black guy voice, and what came out was a wildly offensive, highly disrespectful stereotype of what the AI thought a Black person sounds like, which I found to be incredibly offensive. But it's because the foundational training model was based off of a stereotype performance performed by someone who was not from my community. So it was a stereotype going in, and that implicit bias was baked into the AI model, confirmed in the output, resulting in a very inauthentic stereotypical performance. So that's the danger of having these models and trusting them to perform authentic human experiences and auditions and performances, is that we don't know what's going into that foundational model. So there's a whole host of DEI concerns, because what does a Black voice sound like? What does an Asian voice sound like? What's a gay voice sound like? You don't know. And the AI doesn't discern, and it's a human condition. So it's a touchy subject.
Yeah. And we're seeing that bias across the generative AI landscape in images and
images as well.
Yeah.
And video.
Yeah. Yep. Images and video. All right. And any other questions? So we're getting up to about an hour and a half in here, which is about how long we run. This tends right on track. Any questions? Anything else? Other comments you want to add? You can always reach out to us through the NAVA website, navavoices.org, and my email's on there, phone number's on there. You can reach out to any one of us.
Actually, there's one more thing that I want to say, and that's that those of you who are part of Edge Studios, which is all of you here, you are in very good hands with David Goldberg. I feel like he has the best interests of actors at heart and the best interests of our community at heart. And I don't even want to talk about the reason why I think that, but he has come to us with questions about AI. He has come to us with questions about jobs, and he has always stood for voice actors. And so I just want to give him a big shout out and a round of applause, because he's a great, great person.
Yep.
Karen, thank you.
Yep.
And I will add something. Matthew, Karen, Tim, wow. Just your expertise, your knowledge, your sharing of this information, you're putting together and running this organization is amazing. And and I've taken I've used your company so much. I rely on your company for these questions, that because this is a subject that I'm not familiar with, and I know so many other people trust you, and you guys rock. Nothing other than that. I do want to say just a quick couple of quick thoughts, everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So like Tim said a few moments ago, we don't know none of us know where the industry will be in 6 months or a year or 10 years. However, I can tell you only from our own casting and production department, what's going on is fabulous. We're busier than we have been. Like our numbers are up so much this year. We are running around. Like it's a great problem to be busy. We're really, really busy, and we are hearing from more and more clients who say they tried AI voices, and now they have come back to using human beings. I can't speak for other companies who may have switched to AI and never come back to us, right? They haven't come back to us to say they want to go back to human. And I'm sure it has happened at some point along the way. But we have a nice number of clients who do that, who come back to us. They tend to be where we are finding our growth right now. Again, this is very anecdotal. This is just Edge Studios casting and production department. But we're finding anytime that human performance is really important, that's where we're just exploding right now. And that is commercials. We have recorded so many video games recently, animation projects, audiobooks. It's been terrific for us. So I don't know where we'll be in 6 months. We just rebuilt one of our 5 studios in New York City. So I have some investment I want to get back. And I'm hoping that we stay busy. But we don't know for sure. But boy, numbers are looking good right now.
Yeah. It's great to hear. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we're hearing more of that. Somebody just put that in there, you know, so they got rehired by a commercial because the AI voice didn't hit it. I mean, we're hearing that, you know, multiple instances, and this is an opportunity now to make sure that we get better and better, so that when the AI voices inevitably get better, we still are better, and that's going to be something, you know, really, really important. So, you know, for anybody who's, you know.
Yeah, I think it's like lots of things, right? I mean, there are still photographers out there, professional photographers. Probably before we all had phones and our iPhone, right? You know, there were probably more photographers, but there's still some human needed somewhere. And so, but maybe the photographers who are still in business are the better ones. So this means practice, guys. Practice your voiceover. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we are. Looks like we got all the questions. I think that's, unless anything, Matthew, Karen, anything else you would like to add to this?
I'll just come join us at NAVA if you want.
Yeah. NAVA. Yeah, actually, NAVA is open. We are not only for union actors. We are union and non-union. We've had a lot of people asking us. They say
everyone.
We are for all voice actors, regardless of your union affiliation and regardless of what country you live in. We have, I think last time we looked, we have like 13 or 14 countries represented in NAVA right now, with voice actors spread out around the world. You know, so take a look at the website and see if you qualify for the membership, and then absolutely join us. Or we have all the information on the Join Now page on the website. And if you know, I see a few members here in the group with us now, and you know, we'd love to have you if you qualify for membership. And if not, then we've got a ton of free resources, and keep training, keep working until the point where you can become a member of NAVA. We'd love to have you.
And please feel welcome to make a donation to NAVA.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. We are 100% membership dues and donation based, and that's how we're running things. We have a gala coming up in like 3 weeks. Holy cow. 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
And a virtual gala if you want to join us.
Yep.
If you come in person, you can come to the virtual gala. It's going to be the most fun Zoom party that you've ever been to.
Absolutely. And on that note, then we will thank you all for joining us tonight. Hopefully this was beneficial and helpful, and you learned something, and at the very least, hopefully this gives you enough ability to hopefully ask some questions, you know, the next time you see anything. And hopefully we'll go from there. We need an MC for the gala. We actually, Karen and I and Matthew we have several. We do have several MCs. That's the advantage of having a gala for a voiceover association. Is that you're at no loss for MCs, no loss for Voice of God for these shows by any means. But thank you for the offer, Mike. That's awesome. Also, well, I know it's getting late on the East Coast. You guys are about 9:30 time, and it is. I have a session. I have a client coming in, so I get to go into a session here in LA. But thank you, David, for having us. Matthew, our NAVA operations coordinator and secretary, and Karen Gilfrey, our vice president and co-founder, along with me, Tim Friedlander, a president and co-founder of NAVA. So thank you all, and everybody have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.